we're going to have Roli Aranya from NTNU. She will be giving us a completely different perspective. It's on the societal side of things, urban planning. You are a professor of urban planning at NTNU, and you're also the deputy director of NTNU Community. And I know that you are doing your research on the bottom-up perspective on the energy transition, but also on how this can be involved in the urban planning projects and processes. So you're sporty, you're just jumping in while we're resolving the sound issues, but you would have been here in 7 minutes anyways, so now you're a bit ahead. So for the societal perspective, Roli, take it away. Give her a nice warm round of applause.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this conference. I'm neither a technologist nor an activist, but I feel like an activist sometimes. I'm an urban planner. And what I work with is neither the technology, but I work with urban transitions, and not just urban energy transitions, and I will explain this in my talk. We've had lots of perspectives on emissions, and the one I present here is an urban one. So if you look at urban emissions and you see that spread across the world, you find that also in the case of urban emissions, the countries in the north are leading in those emissions. But when it comes to population, which is the size of the bars here, the predominant urban population is actually not in the Western countries. When it comes to emission, they are much higher, of course, almost double that of the rest of the world. But what we also know is that 70 to 80% of total global carbon emissions come from urban centers. So urban transition and urban energy transition, to follow that, is an important sector to look at, if you can call it a sector at all. And as expected, there are very smart people at the IPCC that had a special report on cities in their sixth assessment report, which talked about pathways. And what are the pathways? We've had some discussions about that today, and there are many gains to be made within urban emissions. A lot of them related to those embodied emissions that you were talking about, Volker. As you see here, there is gains to be made in the residential buildings, commercial buildings, and the hatched part of the gains to be made is with energy transition, and the dark part being without energy transitions. So of course, energy transitions would enhance the gains in emissions that we can make also in the urban sector. The sectors here you recognize, there are, of course, buildings, and they include both use as well as material use and efficiency. And there's waste materials, transport, and so on and so forth. But the pathways that the IPCC proposes, what are the implications for climate mitigation in cities, is, of course, electrification. That is kind of the expected one. And also resource efficiency, focusing on consumption-based perspectives. There was some talk about the demand-side management. And very importantly, cross-sector integration. And this is what I would like to demonstrate when I compare urban transition pathways in Europe and in India. We also had some discussions about knowledge and financial resources to promote urban experimentation. And why experimentation is important? I think there are two purposes to it. This goes back to the first session that we had. We also need, in addition to innovation and experimentation and technology, we need buy-in. We need to convince people. And in order to do that, we need to work bottom-up, and that's where I work. Using co-production, using co-creation as a tactic also enables that we are able to do the lobbying, we're able to increase the buy-in for energy transition and transition in general at a local level. So that's why I think innovation and experimentation is very critical when it comes to urban transition. And similarly, following the same logic, the energy transition is not apolitical. We've talked about that here. The energy transition is very much political, and in most countries is going to be a democratic process, hopefully, which will require negotiations. And those negotiations happen at the local level. It's the municipalities, it's the local bodies that deal with the conflicts that arise out of energy transition and other forms of transitions as well, and also do it on very little capacity and competence that they have for it. So this is a critical aspect of energy transition, the empowerment of urban inhabitants, but also the empowerment of local bodies. And like I mentioned, the integration of sectors is going to be very, very important. But very briefly, I take you through some of the work that my colleagues at my department have been working on. There's been lots of developments in urban energy transition in Europe. It started off with the Lighthouse projects, so smart city projects, sometime in 2015, 16, 17. Then, of course, came the Urban Green Deal, and we had the 112 cities that were, or 100 cities initially that were invited to prepare climate city contracts or city-level strategies for carbon neutrality. And the net zero cities came out of that. And now a more global mission innovation, which the European Commission is part of, where global cities are sharing knowledge on innovation in urban energy and other forms of transition as well. So this is moving to more global collaboration. But the instruments of these urban transitions are very interesting also. We started off with positive energy districts. In the city of Trondheim here, we had a project called Positive City Exchange, which my colleagues were responsible for, which tried to look at sectoral, multi-sectoral integration of a varied energy mix at local level, at neighborhood level, but also other strategies like local energy markets on looking at public participation and local innovation. This has moved on, and we are now talking about the 15-minute city, which focuses on reducing consumption, on reducing mobility, and making things more accessible, good old land use planning, actually, and making sure that you can have access to most things, or most people can have access to most things within a 15-minute radius of where they live. So reducing the requirement for mobility. And then you're moving towards, as expected, more circular cities and more circular city frameworks for transition. But what is interesting is also the bottom one, the new European Bauhaus. Those of you that are aware of it, there is discussion about not just about energy transition. We need to make our cities more sustainable, but we also need to make our cities more livable. We also need to make them more aesthetic, to improve quality of life. And these are all needs that society has in order for energy and sustainability transitions to succeed. And this requires interdisciplinarity, of course, and that is where I come in. That's why you need people like me, because we can work with the people in the cities, and we can work with the local governments. And we have the technology. Most of the technology we do actually have. A lot of people mentioned this about the delay in energy transition caused by conflicts, by people wanting, not in my backyard kind of movements. But we also have to move from that to recognizing that there are conflicting demands and there are conflicting interests in society. And those have to be navigated in order to be able to make any kind of radical changes. So this is where societal readiness, which is one of the frameworks that are being tested, comes from, where you look at both the justice outcomes, the unjust outcomes for some groups of people, but also look at how ready institutions are, how ready policy net frameworks are at local level to actually transition with keeping people's interests and needs in mind. That was Europe. I will take you very briefly through what India has been doing. And this is because I've been working with my students in some of these projects. We started working with the Smart Cities Mission. A lot of you have heard about it probably. India invited 100 cities, and much can be said about the justice aspects and the elite capture of these projects. But it was 100 cities that were invited to make visions, smart city visions. And this is now coming to an end, this mission. And you see the results being advertised here. The elements here are very interesting. So you see smart governance, so need for basic monitoring of different things, policing, and so on and so forth. There is, of course, energy projects, so waste to energy projects. There are smart classrooms, there's smart mobility, there's urban spaces. So here comes the livability and the improvement in the urban life, as well as economic infrastructure. We talked about this morning about skill creation, skill development. There has to be a green economy that follows energy transition, and especially relevant for a country like India. And that is to say that India is by no way a representation of the global south. It is really actually moving quite ahead. Then two things actually stand out. That the most important things that now people are working on in India is urban data. So in order to convince decision makers, you need to have standardized forms of urban data, and those have to be easily available, because the urban transition is about trade-offs. And if you cannot at least have an evidence-based data for decisions to be made on, then those decisions will always be made in the favor of the most powerful lobby when it comes to transition. So also in the interest of representation of interests, and also in the interest of representation of different needs, be it social infrastructure or schools or hospitals, as opposed to energy transition, you need the data. So standardization of data and the sharing of learning across cities is becoming more and more important in India. The second thing that they're really focusing on, and this brings me back to what our rector started talking about and what we were talking about in the last energy transition conference, about capacity, and also talking about talent, the availability of talent. And India's done a lot of things when it comes to recruiting very highly skilled young graduates and connecting them directly to municipalities. So they formed something which is called the Indian Smart Cities Fellowship Program, where there were a lot of very talented young people that were connected directly to local bodies, and that helped the local bodies go through their pathways for smart city project implementation, and which has been a tremendous capacity building for those local bodies. So to conclude, there are some common strategies that you observe when you see energy transitions and urban transitions across the globe. And those are right priorities. I mean, it all makes sense. One of them, as I mentioned, is the cross-system sector integration. You do need to look at urban transition as a mix of not just energy, different kinds of energy, but also other kinds of transition. There is inequality. There's climate adaptation action that needs to be taken. There is a need for improvement in schooling, in healthcare, so on and so forth. And these cross-sector integrations are very, very important in local politics as well as in local transition. Then the second thing is coupling of mitigation and adaptation. We haven't talked about adaptation much, but because of the density that you experience in urban areas, adaptation is also going to be very, very critical, especially in urban areas. So we do need to couple those two things together. Capacity of local governments, I've talked about. The community buy-in, the justice as perspectives in transition, which we talked about in the first session, and also upscaling, the actual readiness for uptake from innovative pilot projects. But what is unique, I think, is going to be unique in the North, is going to be the standardization of measures. I mean, just in Europe, you see, there are so many different versions of data and so many different platforms that data is being created on. We will need more standardization to be able to judge those trade-offs, to be able to make good decisions. We would also need climate assessment frameworks at city level. There are very little assessment frameworks available at city level. And not surprisingly, in the South, I think there's going to be a focus both on basic infrastructure and smart infrastructure. We have to fix those gaps. There's going to be a focus on exclusion and vulnerability, existing vulnerability, and of course, local capacity and finance. And I will stop there.
Thank you so much.